So we're getting another version of Dan Heng. And no, this isn't just another skin or a rerun with tweaks. This is something entirely different. According to reliable leak sources, including early gameplay testers and data miners, Dan Heng is coming back in what looks like his third playable form, and it's honestly not what most people were expecting. Save up to 25% on the current banners at lootbar.gg. All you need is your UID and server. The link is in the description. Now, if you've been playing Honkai Star Rail for a while, you already know Dan Heng as the calm, wind element hunt path guy we started with. Then came Imbibitor Lunae, his real identity, with flashy imaginary damage and massive charged-up combos. But this time, he's taking a completely different direction, and that's where things get interesting. Leaked info from sources who've been consistent throughout the 3.x beta cycle says that this version of Dan Heng is a 5-star physical character following the path of preservation. That's right, from Wind Hunt to Imaginary Destruction, and now to physical preservation. It's a wild shift, and while his element and role are changing, his core identity still ties back into that whole dragon theme he's always had. One of the first things that stands out is his appearance. This time, Dan Heng's outfit reportedly features white and green tones, a much more subdued look compared to the dramatic robes of Imbibitor Lunae. His animations, however, are said to be mostly gold-colored, which might suggest a divine or spiritual aesthetic rather than a combat-heavy one. But the real highlight is the dragon. This version of Dan Heng brings with him a summonable dragon that leans more into Eastern-style mythology, very different from the huge celestial beast we saw in his destruction form. And his gameplay? Definitely not another DPS. According to the latest leak builds, Dan Heng will be a support unit who can generate shields and buff allies, but with a unique twist, he allows teammates to summon a dragon of their own. Yeah, it's not just his dragon doing the work. The way it's described, Dan Heng buffs an ally, and as a result, that ally gets their own dragon summon. It's treated as a full summon, meaning it occupies space, deals effects, and even interacts with the ally's abilities. One particularly cool interaction noted in the leaks is that if Phanon is the target of the buff, the summoned dragon will remain in his zone during his ultimate, which means it supports his during his key moments in battle. This kind of mechanic hasn't really been seen in Star Rail before. Sure, we've had summoners like Castariche and characters who bring in memory spirits, but a buff that gives the recipient their own summon is new territory. It adds a layer of strategy. Who do you buff? When do you do it? And can you rotate that dragon summon across different team members for optimal support? It's the kind of gameplay that could make this version of Dan Heng not just a good shielder, but a core enabler in specific team comps. Also, his shift to physical damage is worth talking about. The original rumor pegged him as a fire unit, but recent builds have him clearly marked as physical. That might disappoint a few people hoping for another fire option, but physical teams often get overlooked, so this could finally be the shakeup they needed, especially if Dan Heng ends up synergizing with physical damage dealers in the way a support like Ruan Mei helps Harmony teams. Of course, that depends on his final numbers and scaling, but the utility potential is already making waves. Now, let's talk business. Banner sales. Some sources, including those that previously leaked banner rankings and predictions, suggest that Dan Heng's new form is expected to hit A rank in sales. That's actually a pretty big deal. A rank means solid, reliable sales, better than average, especially for support characters. It puts him on track to do better than characters who had a more niche appeal or those who weren't particularly meta. And considering that this version of Dan Heng is not just another damage dealer, but a versatile support with a summoning twist, it's easy to see why Hoyoverse has high expectations. So the big question is, will this Dan Heng become meta-defining, or is he more of a fun, flexible addition for fans of the character? That's going to depend on how his final kit shakes out once we get full data, especially his shield strength, how the dragon scales, and what kind of buffs he brings. But even now, from everything we've seen, it's clear that this isn't just another alternate costume or stat swap. This version of Dan Heng is shaping up to be completely different from both of his previous forms, and potentially one of the most creative preservation characters we've seen so far. Let me know what you think. Are you interested in this new Dan Heng? And do you think this dragon summoning support mechanic is going to be the next big thing? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I'm really curious how people are reacting to this one. And yeah, if we get more leaks or the kit gets updated in the beta, I'll be covering it here as always, so stay tuned. Save up to 25% on the current banners at lootbar.gg. All you need is your UID and server. The link is in the description.